Hi, everyone. Today we're going to go with the number two in the three Naga rums that I happen to have on hand. And this one is a slightly different one that is called the Shani, Kingdom of Siam. And it's actually an 11-year-old, not a 10-year-old like the other one. Although in all other respects, it's very much the same rum. And that extra year is because the rum itself was aged or finished, if you want to call it a 1 year finish, in Pedro Jimenez sherry barrels. So it's an 11-year-old that's based upon the 10-year-old, and it's got that extra finish to give it a little bit of extra oomph. And it is bottled at 4 to 6%, which I think is a very, very good idea, because if there was one failing that I thought, aside from the tasting notes that I gave for the original 10-year-old, the PX version, that 11-year-old to be put at 4 to 6% is a good idea, and the 40% of the original, it kind of just made it a little bit too weak for government work, if you want to call it that. All right, so let's talk about it. The label of the Shani requires some explanation. Now, it's part of the branded Naga line of rums, a sort of cross between a merchant bottler and a contract rum and independent bottling that is run by. It is made in Thailand by Thai Bev, which is a sort of like a spirits conglomerate that has like 99% of the market and 12 different distilleries, of which 4 make rum. And it is released by Sebastian Follop, who is a French gentleman, I think he's from France, who used to work for Bardenay he's been a consultant and a marketer and so on. And then he decided that he wanted to get into independent bottling, or at least contract rum, and release some rums of his own, which is something that is really kind of neat. And we see it quite a lot with people who are very deep into the subculture. Now, the word Shani itself, which is what they call this rum, has got a bit of a double meaning. On the one hand, it refers to the purple and red colors associated with Thai sunsets on Saturdays, which leads me to the obvious questions of what happens to the other 6 days of the week. And does God actually pay attention to which day of the week that he's going to give you a really nice sunset or something like that? That's just me, right? It also denotes Saturday itself, or the planet Saturn, in Hindu and Sanskrit-derived languages across Asia. And that's reflected in the color of the label. Now, unfortunately, of course, my sample doesn't have that label, but the bottle actually does. And Shani written really close to it. And that's referenced as well in the Kingdom of Siam, which, as I mentioned before, is what Thailand used to be called until 1932, I think it was. And I've gone into the history in the previous review, and the written review has that as well. So you can kind of like go there or to Wikipedia to satisfy you. Interesting. Okay. Now, in the previous review of the standard 10-year-old 40%, I remarked that it was something of a commercial rum, a completely commercial rum, made to appeal, to tweak interest, and to sell, based on a combination of easy sipping, age, 10 years, price, and strength. To some extent, this one follows from that point, I think. It's got the same, the basis is the same 10-year-old, aged for an additional year in the PX sherry casks in Thailand, but all other production processes, the Thai sugarcane, the Thai molasses, the 5 times distilled on a column still, initially aged in charred ex-bourbon barrels at the distillery, all of this remains the same. The points of difference then are the additional year in the PX and the 6 extra proof points to 4 to 6%. Now, does that make for a discernible, definitive difference, a serious one? Well, you'd have to try to judge for yourself, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Well, when you nose this thing, the PX definitely leaps out and jumps at you. It makes a strong statement, that's for sure. It smells sweet, winey, deep, and there's a nuttiness and plum wine aroma that marks it out as something separate from the original 10. There's some vanilla and brown sugar and caramel notes. There's some ice cream in there, kind of like a combination between salted caramel and vanilla, I suppose. And there's a faint suggestion of stewed apples and perhaps an overripe orange or two. The rind in particular, when you squeeze it and the oil comes out and coats your fingers. The palate, let's take a look at that. All right, the middling strength, the 4 to 6%, serves this thing really, really well. There's vanilla, there's coconut, there's ripe oranges, the edge of going off, there's plums, there's black grapes, and some crushed almonds and walnuts. You notice that there's extra here, and it's not just because of the PX, but you're simply being able to extract more because of the strength being a little bit more intense. But even so, it is soft, it is even a bit sweet, and it's not sharp, and that's nice. And the profile presents as much firmer and therefore much more pleasant, at least to me, in a way that makes it a really drinkable piece of work. The weakness of it, if I had to say there was one, and there are others, is that the finish is surprisingly sharp. I mean, it's breathy and it's sweet, and it channels faint notes of the grapes and the plums and the peaches and vanilla and the wine again. And it's interesting enough that one just wishes it wasn't quite that short. I mean, it's here today, gone tomorrow, right? It'll last a little bit, but not enough to really matter. Okay, so those are the tasting notes, and what do I think? Well, I think that the nose is pretty good, but the taste is where I think the rum falls down somewhat. Remember when I was talking about the 10-year-old, I thought that the vanilla and the coconut took on a dominance that made it almost like a strengthened Malibu or something like that, and dampened down the other flavors that you could be getting. Well, here you're getting some of those additional bits and pieces, right? But the PX and the wine-like aspects of it are so far in front that they eclipse just about everything else, including the vanilla and the coconut, which are there, but they're just kind of like shoved into the background now. The subtler notes are therefore kind of eclipsed, and the balance is therefore just a bit off. It's too much of one and not enough of the other, is my considered opinion after trying it several times. And I do believe that it's just a bit sweeter than is necessary, which makes me wonder whether the sherry barrels were wet or dry. That was a thing many years ago, whether there was ever some stuff sloshing around the bottom of the barrel before they dumped the rum in. Do these points that I mentioned, these points of difference, do they make it better or worse? Well, overall, I'd have to say it's better. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. It really is. The departure from the base 10-year-old is here and it's clear. And when we come down to it, the fact is that it is not an unmixed blessing, because while the PX gives with the one hand and the strength gives with one hand, and that finish is really kind of neat, even though it's too short. What we're seeing is other things being left in the background, right? There's too much of the PX and too little of everything else. And yet it is still a better rum than the original. And it's undeniable. The nuttiness, the slightly stronger taste of aromas and so on. The balance is a little bit off, but it's still better. It makes it a nice drink to have by itself. Yes, one may wish for a little less PX and a little more of the things that make for a more elegant finished rum. But there will be many people, myself among them, who just enjoy it for all the reasons that I mentioned here and have opinions that, maybe a bit of a tangent from mine. But like I said, it's a decent enough rum, and they'll like the Shani for all the reasons I mentioned. And if the balance is off, and if I think there's too much of one another, other people will probably think exactly the opposite. And all I can say in summary, for a rum that I am probably going to score about 79 points, right, is that if you haven't tried it before, just so that you can try something from Thailand that has got an interesting taste, even though it isn't widely divergent from what you're already familiar with, it's worth trying at least once and maybe buying just because of those reasons, and just enjoy it for what it is without asking for too much. That's the way I see it anyway. That's it for this rum, the Shani, and I've got one more in the queue that I'm going to do pretty much right away so that you can get a sense of all three, because I'm going to release these 1, 2, 3 in 3 separate days. And that's going to be fairly interesting, and I'm going to leave it here for now. Until the next time, take care, everybody, and have a really, really nice day. Take care. Bye-bye.